YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. We managed to make our first BoonBoomger Sunday in a while, special occasion for the debut of our Black Ranger. So honestly, I had some mixed feelings about this episode. I'm still enjoying the series overall and still enjoying quite a bit about this episode, but there was just some things that didn't quite work for me 100%. I mean, we have the Black Ranger joining the team, not as a ranger officially at the beginning, but just as this sort of go-between between the organization or the agency or whatever and the Rangers. And as I said last week, I really wish we would have had one episode seeing him operate with the team not as a ranger, mainly because I think that's an interesting dynamic, especially since we know he's going to be a ranger, and I think going into that it could be really good. And going into this episode and watching it, I was thinking this would have made a really good two-parter, with part one being the lead into him being a ranger, and then the second one being him being a ranger, because it felt like rushed in a way, just in terms of like the motivation of him becoming a ranger. Not the motivation, but more so the motivation of letting him on the team. Because he starts off right away, and first of all, the overalls, guys. I know there's some people that like him. I'm not anti-overalls in general, but I'm just not liking the outfit for this character. He looks like a kid that got hit with an embiggening ray, and he became like big Tom Hanks, except less entertaining. It just looks weird. And then next week we got him with a fanny pack. Like, I'm just not into it. But anyway, he wants to join the team, and Taya says no. And it brings up these really conflicting arguments in my head, because I'm like, on the one hand, this guy's a legitimate police officer. He's a police officer. Baby dragon. Thanks, Yug. But he's like a police officer, so arguably, he technically should be more qualified than these three randos. But at the same time, all we've seen of him, he just kind of pathetically falls over. So they're also seemingly more qualified than him. So it's like this argument. I'm like, well, technically he should be more qualified, but they've shown to be more competent. But I don't know, it was just weird. And then you get into this thing where he talks about how he always worshipped superheroes and wanted to be one. I'm like, then why did you turn on him so quickly last week with little evidence? And then you have this whole motivation later where he has this resolve where, first of all, probably my least favorite thing about his debut was how over-the-top melodramatic he was being. I don't know, maybe it was the mood I was in, I just was having none of it. It was just so much shouting and over-the-top performance. It's weird how these last 2 years, I've had a hard time getting behind our Black Ranger as a character. Like, it took all the way to the last arc, but Kaguragi became a favorite. And I don't exactly hate this guy, but I don't know, it's not for me so far. Like, just the over-the-top performance and just shouting out a bunch of generic Toku phrases kind of got on my nerves, to be honest. Not just in terms of the performance, but also it didn't feel earned. It felt overly dramatic for the moment. And he said, like, he shouted out, I want to be a hero, but not because it's supposed to be fun or because of the glory or whatever. It's because I want to protect people. I'm like, was that ever in doubt? Like, they tried to cast this storyline like he just wanted to be a hero because he thought it would be fun and he needed to learn to protect people. But yet earlier in the episode when he spied a monster and he called it in, when he was told to stand down, he couldn't because he heard cries of help. I'm like, so that was never in question. And then Taya lets him on the team when he declares he wants to protect the BoonBoomgers. It just all felt very confusing and kind of soulless to me. Like, I feel like I didn't understand. Like, I understand that he's a good person that wants to protect people, but I feel it was muddled because I felt like it was calling into question his commitment, which I never felt was in question. I don't know. And then, again, between that and the over-the-top performance, in particular, when he picked up the changer and just screamed, I'm like, what the... Why did you do that? Like, you're not going to go Super Saiyan, my man. That left me with some very mixed feelings about the episode. With the monster side of stuff, we definitely have some continued Team Rocket antics. I really like the sort of lounge base they were in. They mostly have been going to sort of just random locations, but I wouldn't mind that being their base because it kind of just feels like a place that some sort of shady gangsters would hang out. But they're still just wanting recognition, and they create this dartboard monster that, in general, I have to say, the monster designs have been pretty on point this year, but he makes people play these weird games, including some of Dan Snyder's greatest hits. And that's how the Rangers get in trouble, is they play the games like, you want to play a game? It's like Saw, but really lame. And that's how we have the random things happening to them, like Pink getting hit with pans, Blue getting like pies to the face, and then Red ending up in a torture chair. Those feel disproportionate, to be honest. But they all kind of wind up incapacitated, and the Black Ranger's like, I'm going to yell out my motivations! And then they're like, okay, now you get to be a part of the team. And as expected, it's Orange that delivers the case, and he's like, and throws him the axe, and he transforms. And like I said, needlessly screams when he picks it up. Like, again, stop. I have to say though, it's kind of nice. The sounds afterwards are kind of the same grating tone, but when he does the boom boom boom, it's actually kind of a cooler, like less grating sounding voice. It's like if the annoying crackhead Oompa Loompa was trying to sound cool. I actually kind of like that. And in general, the axe device has grown on me. I like how the little watch comes off. I think that's cool, and it kind of fits in with the other team, but they have their own unique one at the same time. And I like how his, changer goes into the steering wheel. I mean, we knew that happened, but seeing it in action, I think it actually is pretty cool. And in general, he had a really cool debut fight, and I've talked about in the past few weeks, but the fights have been really memorable and cinematic, and he got a really good first appearance, nice roll call with the Core 4. Not the real Core 4 from Scream 6, that's the all-time Core 4, but this Core 4 for now, and a great debut fight for him, really cinematic. We also debut the police car and his Mecha, obviously, but the police car form, the Police Robo. And I am glad that they saved debuting one of these mech form changes for something significant. I know it's a different case than the Rider forms, but after watching with Rider, the forms meaning so little, and even with King Oger, we did have the Shoe Gods meaning something, but I remember how shoehorned in the weapon mecha debut felt. Those were probably one of the worst things about, not one of the worst things about King Oger, that's being overdramatic, but the worst paced things. In a series that was pretty good about giving everything meaning, those felt the most Toku Toy shoehorned in. And I like that we waited to have the first full-on form debut of a new kind of mecha formation for a meaningful episode, which was the debut of the Black Ranger, of course, because it fits in with his theme. And I also want to highlight real quick, they did, of course, do your race scene at the beginning, and I do like that because it adds a bit of variety. And in particular, this week's episode had a little bit more of a fun one where you had this unique strategy of duplicating the police cars, and I saw a couple people asking in the last couple weeks' reviews what's the point of this race thing? And I always thought it was they were trying to stop the little dude from making my monster grow or whatever. I don't know if that's supposed to be the purpose, but if that's the case, they always fail because even when they win, they just knock them out into the world to make the monster grow. I think if that were the case, I think it would actually be kind of neat to have maybe a week here and there where they successfully stop him in the race, and then that means there's no mecha battle. Because I don't mind that. I like the mecha battles, but sometimes they get old. Plus, that would just make more sense to have this setting make sense. But anyway, speaking of the mecha battle, it was great. It was a night mecha battle, first of all, which was really cool. I feel like we don't see those often enough. There's a very good chance we have had one since then, but the last time I remember it was from Kira Major because they did that quite often, especially in the early days to show off the shiny jewel mecha, and it just makes for a nice, refreshing change of pace aesthetic. But this was probably one of the more memorable mecha fights in terms of it feeling more like a full-on fight. Not the others haven't, and they've been pretty good so far, but the more memorable ones is stuff like when he's unscrewing them and turning them into a wedding cake or whatever. But this one felt more like a dynamic fight, felt very reminiscent of some Deca Ranger Robo action, really good and strong debut for the mecha. And I also really liked the last scene where they inform the inspector that he's on the team and they all are like, oh, we're gonna have curry now, and she kind of lets her guard down and celebrates. In general, I always find that to be funny when you have a stern character that lets their persona slip a little bit. And also, I just liked the mood of that last scene because something I have talked about in recent years is even though I like that we've been experimental, I feel like with the last 3 years, you've kind of been missing that core Sentai dynamic feel, where they all just come together at the base or at the restaurant or wherever they're at and have that dynamic feel. It took forever with the other series. Zenkaiger had it close, but since there was only one character or one human on the team, it wasn't the same. Dawn Brothers finally met each other in episode 49, and King Oger, they eventually came together, but it was still different, so I do really appreciate that kind of cozy, classic dynamic. Yeah, overall, I'm still enjoying the series. I still enjoyed quite a bit about this episode, but I had really mixed feelings on Black Ranger's debut. I don't know, maybe I need to rewatch it, but it felt really random, and it felt like the motivations and reasoning just didn't line up for me. But what did you guys think of the Black Ranger's debut? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.